What's up everybody, this is the 2012 Acura TL. Huge thanks to Harrison Auto Sales and Service for providing me here with this very nice TL to review for you guys today. So the 2012 TL, this was the fourth generation and the final generation of the TL, and the 2012 model was the mid-cycle refresh for this generation TL. So a lot of people didn't love the more beak-inspired grille that you had previously on this generation. So for 2012, they smoothed it over here. You also had headlights that are now painted black for the bezels there, and they tweaked the bumpers both in the front and in the back. They tweaked the taillights. Personally, looking back on it, I don't think the beak was that bad, but I think this is also a nice improvement, and either one looks really nice. I think they've aged pretty well here, you know, now 11 years later. I also love, like, you have these flared out fenders in the front and just the sharp, crisp styling. I just always thought it looked really great. You have some nice darker wheels here on this one as well. This is the super handling all-wheel drive one, which definitely gave you some sportier stuff, although you could get even more sportier stuff on the manual transmission version, which unfortunately this one is not. This is just the automatic, but the automatic was big news for 2012 as well. This was the first year to get the 6-speed automatic finally, instead of the 5-speed you had previously. And then, you know, again, a very squared off trunk lid there, and some pretty cool looking taillights and nice exhaust tips and all that. And so overall, I think that this generation of the TL actually looks really good. And I always liked all the generations of the TL. I thought they were all really cool, especially this fourth generation. I think still looks really sharp and is still just a really good looking vehicle. The interior of the 2012 TL is obviously dated at this point, and this one is also a base super handling all-wheel drive one, basically not the base TL. That one was non-super handling all-wheel drive, but otherwise this doesn't have the technology package, which was the all-important package that really improved this interior a good bit. So as this one is, you know, you can see there's this tiny little non-color display there for your radio and things like that. Now, if you were to go for that technology package, not only would you have nicer Milano leather seats that also for 2012 are able to be ventilated seats, these ones are just heated, but you would get a full 8-inch screen here that was color and did navigation. Unfortunately, it wasn't touchscreen. You had to use this controller joystick thing, which in this one basically just changes your radio station. It's like a tune knob, which is still nice to have, but you know, doesn't do all the movement that the actual technology package one would do. And you also didn't have blind spot monitoring or even keyless access. This still has a twist key. That was something that came in that technology package as well. This one also has the base 8-speaker stereo. That was standard. You could get a 10-speaker 440 watt ELS stereo system, and these again all part of that technology package. So a lot of stuff in that package. If you're shopping for one of these, you know, you might want to make sure it has that package if those are things that you want. But this interior is still totally fine. So first thing, sitting down in these seats, they're soft, comfortable leather seats here. They have lumbar adjustment and a good amount of bolstering too, I have to say. They actually are hugging me in pretty nicely, and I'm not a huge guy, but they just are still, you know, pretty nice snug seats. The steering wheel also, I'm surprisingly impressed with. It's actually a pretty thick rim. I think they were inspired by BMW back then, and little 10 and 2 notches, just a few buttons here on the wheel, little plastic paddle shifters on the back of the wheel here, and you know, not amazing or anything, but you know, still just a really nice steering wheel as far as everything else goes. The gauges are also the trendy thing of the time, which was the deeply hooded circular, you know, gauges, but I think they actually still look really great. I like the way they look a lot. At the top there, you have a basic little screen which will show you your fuel economy and also your torque split for the super handling all-wheel drive system, which is fun, but otherwise, you know, pretty simple and straightforward. And nothing wrong with the gauges though. But coming over to the center, again, as long as you're okay just doing basic radio stuff, that's all that screen is good for. I mean, it's simple and it's fine. It does have satellite radio, for example, so that keeps it a little bit modern, so you're not stuck to FM. And it does also have an auxiliary jack and a USB jack here, so those are nice, you know, just to at least do some extra audio stuff. And you do have a 6-disc CD changer, but if you were to go up to that navigation-equipped one, you'd have a hard drive built in, which would be able to rip CDs and all that too. But just, you know, a decent amount of buttons here coming down, but it's all logically arranged, and these days I think this is actually a really nice setup. You know, you do have some interesting plastics and faux wood here and stuff, but overall I think it's a pretty plush interior, again, just because these seats are just so comfortable. But storage spaces here in the TL are pretty good as well. You have a bottle pocket here in the doors. You do have this little extra bonus space in the center tunnel area, and also one in front of the shift knob there, and then you also have nice 2 deep cup holders, and a little bonus space that slides out here from the armrest, and then you have the center armrest that opens up, and You know, you have, again, just those hookups there, another power outlet. There's also another hidden power outlet up front here by the shifter too, which is cool. But a good deep cubby there. This armrest though, I mean, you can see it's not very thickly padded. It had some nice leather on it, but the padding was pretty thin here, and you know, you could feel the plastic underneath. So not the most plush thing. And then going on to the back seat here in the TL, it's a pretty good sized back seat. I'm 5'9", me sitting behind myself. I have about 3 inches of legroom to spare. And a nice, soft, comfortable back seat. They have a fold-down center armrest, the 2 cup holders built into it. They have their own air vents, which is great, and also little pockets in those doors as well. The trunk space in the TL is actually really deep. Now, there's kind of a high lift over into the trunk, but I mean, just the fact that the trunk is as deep as it is, I think is really nice. And it goes a pretty decent ways back there as well. Nothing really under the floor there, but overall, just, you know, a good sized trunk for a vehicle of this size, just like you would expect. But let's start up and go for a drive. The TL, again, since it wasn't totally keyless access, this one has a little switchblade key there that pops up, and just a few basic buttons there on the back of it. And, you know, pretty nice key there nonetheless, but of course you just slide into the slot here. And it starts right up. All right, so setting off here in the 2012 Acura TL. So the first thing you notice about this vehicle, I think the first thing that jumped out at me is just the very jumpy throttle response. It is like insanely quick. I mean, you just breathe on this gas pedal, it immediately just like wants to take off. Gives it a very eager feeling. It just, you gotta recalibrate your brain for basically everything else out there that is less responsive than this. Just the way they tuned that throttle response is crazy. Brakes also feel nice and firm and just feel really good. A little bit of dead travel, they're easy to be smooth with, but you know, just really nice feeling brakes as well. And also, I like the steering. It has a nice weight to it. So that was one of the things for the super handling all-wheel drive versions, since they were marketed as the sportier variant. They all got slightly stiffer suspension and slightly tighter steering. And so, I mean, the steering does feel very good. Suspension also feels really good as well. And this one even has 127,000 miles on it. So maybe it's not as fresh as it used to be, but I mean, it still feels really sharp and direct, and you know, doesn't feel loose or, you know, imprecise at all. They actually did a really good job, I think, with all the driving inputs here. The automatic transmission also so far has been pretty well programmed and has been pretty smooth in my experience here. We will certainly test that out some more here. But yeah, overall, just really nice. They also, for the 2012 model here, made them 3 decibels quieter, supposedly, for the interior and the road noise and all that. And does feel very nice and quiet and luxurious, like you would expect out of, you know, an entry-level luxury sedan of the time. But I'm gonna go ahead and put it into the sport mode for the transmission. Let's turn down onto this back road here and see how it does. Here we go. Okay, there we go. Wow, it gets up and moves really, really nicely. It's a good amount of power here. So we have a 3.7 liter naturally aspirated V6 engine here for the super handling all-wheel drive versions. It does 305 horsepower, 273 pound-feet of torque, and 0 to 60 time, I think Car and Driver got about 6.2 seconds with a 6-speed auto here back in 2012, and pretty punchy. But surprisingly, this was actually still the era where the manuals were faster than the automatic, and so Car and Driver tested a manual version of this and got a 5.2 seconds 0 to 60. And it's awesome, the manual came with the all-wheel drive system too, which was great. Now, if you didn't want all-wheel drive, you could go down to a front-wheel drive version, but then you'd also go down in performance. You'd go down to a 3.5 liter V6 engine, and that gave up about 20 odd horsepower and about the same amount of pound-feet of torque. So, you know, a little penalty there for not getting the all-wheel drive, but those were also the most fuel-efficient ones and got the best fuel economy. The addition of the 6-speed automatic also gave you rev match downshifts, supposedly, and that was something they advertised as being, you know, a cool new feature here. So we're going to try that out. There's no dedicated manual mode. You just, you know, start pulling the paddles and it figures itself out. And it doesn't want to go down to first gear there, so I guess it doesn't want to get too close to the red line. But here we are, do an upshift, rev it out a little bit, and then... Okay, so it's not super snappy here. Another downshift. I mean, downshifts aren't bad. I think it's this is just an Eisen 6-speed. I'm not exactly sure of that, but just, you know, your average 6-speed automatic kind of response time. Very similar to what you got from like a Lexus IS with a 6-speed auto at the time, things like that. But as far as, you know, handling goes, fantastic. You know, we're on this back road here now, and it's really, really good. So like I said, super handling all-wheel drive one's got stiffer suspension, sportier setup, but then if you went for the manual one, everything got even stiffer. Stiffer springs, even more, stiffer dampers, tighter steering. It even had stiffer transmission and motor mounts for that manual one. So really, that's the sportiest experience. But even for the auto here, again, everything was nicely stiffened up and sporty, but not, you know, so much so that it's uncomfortable or anything. But it just feels so good. You have like a nice low seating position here, and it just really feels like it wants to carve up the road. We have 245 wide tires all around, and then, you know, coming out of a corner, this has the torque vectoring all-wheel drive. That's what the super handling all-wheel drive thing is for, and the torque vectoring works really well. I mean, I will test it out a little bit more coming out of more corners in a minute, but I mean, it just, everything feels so neutral, and it really, this is handling way better than I expected it to be perfectly honest. It really feels good around corners, and that torque vectoring all-wheel drive system can send up to 70% of the power to the rear, and then 100% of that 70% of power to either wheel. So it can really kind of overdrive that inside wheel, and this is something that, you know, we've seen with Honda and Acura's all-wheel drive systems. They've continued to evolve this system here, you know, over a decade later, and it's fantastic in the modern iterations as well. But I'm really impressed that it seems to be working really well here, even with these early versions of it as well, and it still feels really impressive. But we got a tight corner here coming up, and chucking it in. All right, a little protest from the tires. But, you know, I felt pretty good. I mean, there's definitely some understeer there. And I'd say, you know, comparing this to like some other comparable sports sedans of the time, like Infiniti G37, which was a little bit smaller, but, you know, that's a rear biased setup with an actual rear-wheel drive based, you know, thing. And so I think something like that feels still a little bit more agile and a little more playful than this does. Again, still being a little bit more front heavy. And I mean, the super handling all-wheel drive system definitely helps, and compared to other front-wheel drive based sports sedans, I'd say this is definitely, you know, up there as one of the best in, again, its segment and its time period that it's in. But you know, all the rear-wheel drive based stuff I think handles better, you know, the 3 Series at the time, all that. But I'd say, you know, based on my foggy recollection of what like an A4 was like to drive from this time period, you know, I'd say this still feels pretty similar to that, and maybe even slightly better. And let's do an acceleration here from a dead stop. V6s do sound good. And I mean, yeah, this thing is quick. I mean, you also got to keep in mind 305 horsepower is still more than what you get currently from the Acura TLX, even in 2023, 2024 model year here. I mean, it's really, I mean, this is still a solid amount of power, and obviously this, you know, you have to rev this out a little more versus the low down power of the turbo vehicles, you know, these days that are a little punchier at the lower RPMs compared to this. But this is also fun to ring out, because especially these motors back then still had VTEC, both on the intake and exhaust ports, and so it just, you know, is also kind of fun to get that extra little rip in the upper RPMs there, and still just feels really good, honestly. And as far as curb weight, that's another thing to mention for the handling. These still just managed to stay under 4,000 pounds, 3,994 pounds. And as we chuck it in again, try and boot it out of the corner there, transmission wasn't really right in the perfect gear there, so, you know, still a little slow coming out of that corner. But you know, I mean, this isn't the best sports sedan out there. I don't think anyone really should expect that. But now just calming down and cruising here on a back road, you know, it still is just a very comfortable, great daily drive. This would be just really comfortable with these seats, combined with the still smooth ride, great handling, great seating position. It's just a really nice car to just, you know, lean back and just enjoy the drive whenever you're not trying to push it and, you know, drive like you're in a race car. So, you know, it's just a really nice vehicle. I feel like it'd be great to daily drive, great to live with. But the last two things I mentioned here are the pricing and the fuel economy. And so fuel economy, that is one thing that did improve with the 6-speed automatic. You got a couple mpg better as a result of going up to this transmission. And so it's rated at 18 mpg in the city, 26 on the highway, and 21 combined. And so, you know, totally in line with, you know, a V6, a large V6 powered automatic transmission, all-wheel drive luxury sedan. You know, I think that's pretty much par for the course, and you know, I think that's totally fine. And then the last thing to mention though is the pricing. Now, pricing obviously for used vehicles is all over the place. When these were new, this one actually, the window sticker was in there still. It was $40,000, which adjusted for inflation is, you know, going to be a lot higher these days. So I mean, it wasn't cheap considering you can still get a TLX, a brand new one, in the low 40,000 range, and this again isn't really loaded up with any options. So I mean, it's kind of impressive that they've been able to keep the price point of these Acura sedans to a pretty low point. It's even comparably now cheaper than it was even back, you know, in 2012. But you know, regardless, this one, you know, 127,000 miles, has certainly, you know, lived a good life here, and you know, been driven a lot. But it's only $12,000, and I think, you know, for something with all-wheel drive with over 300 horsepower and a torque vectoring all-wheel drive system at that, not just, you know, an all-wheel drive system to get around in the snow, but to truly have great handling. And you know, obviously again, the interior leaves a lot to be desired as far as technology. If you get the right package, I think this would help this to feel a little more modern, but you're still going to be stuck, you know, using a phone mount most likely for any kind of modern technology stuff. And you know, but as long as that stuff doesn't bother you, it's a great, you know, nice interior. And if you're shopping in, you know, this price range and you're shopping in this time period, I mean, this is going to be the case with basically everything else. There was very few things that had touchscreens back then, or even decent infotainment systems, to be totally honest. But you know, a lot of the main competitors, you know, again, that are popular, like the Infiniti G37, like I said, handles a little bit better. I think I enjoy driving that just a little bit more, but I think this is a slight bit more comfortable than that. There was also the M37 back then, which is a little bit larger. The TL kind of splits the difference because the TSX was, you know, the Accord-based smaller luxury sedan back then. But you know, so Infiniti was, you know, certainly a popular option, especially these days. But of course, there's all the usual German stuff as well, with 3 Series, 5 Series, because again, the TL kind of splits both segments in a way. And then you also have the C-Class, E-Class, and you know, the A6, A4 from Audi. And there's also like the Cadillac CTS, which is an often forgotten competitor that also drove pretty well. I've just only driven the V versions of that for reviews at least. So lots of good competitors, and you know, like I said, I don't think this is the best handling, but I certainly think it's far from the worst, and I think it just drives really nice. And for most people just looking for something comfortable to be a nice daily driver with that all-weather capability, I think this is going to be great, and you know, be more than enough performance for, you know, anyone that's shopping one of these. And so anyway, that's all of my thoughts here on the TL. I'd love to drive a manual version someday, but this automatic one is still really nice to live with, especially again with the all-important 6-speed you got here for 2012. I think that probably is a huge improvement and makes a big difference. But that's all of my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Huge thanks to Harrison Auto Sales and Service once again for providing me here with this vehicle to review for you guys today. And if you're watching this video in the first few weeks of me posting it, it might still be available, so check out their site. I'll leave the link in the description there, and you can give them a call and check this vehicle out if you're interested. But yeah, anyway, thank you all once again very much for watching. Leave a like and subscribe to keep these videos coming, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.